welcome to the Zod and Drea podcast.
Thank you guys for visiting with us today. We've got an amazing episode today.
Now, of course, we got a great show. Now, if you haven't seen it, make sure you check out Black Panther again for the second or third or fourth time because we just saw it again last night and it was absolutely incredible. So if you haven't understood why representation matters so much, make sure you check out our podcast regarding that topic because it's really important. But this time, talk about representation, we got something that's really special that we're going to be discussing.
We are so honored to have two guests with us today. They took time out of their busy, crazy schedule to share with us what they've been up to. And we've got Matty Steinkamp and Pita Juarez.
Yeah, so Pita and Matty, they have created a movie called You Racist, Sexist Bigot, right? All right, good. I want to make sure I'm getting that right. But make sure that you check it out. Yeah, I mean, if that hurts your feelings, then yeah, more than likely they are talking about you. So we want to make sure that we not just expand on what they've done in this film, but we talk about some of the disparities and things that people are going through in Phoenix area, in Arizona. And since you three, not myself because I was raised in Jersey, but they are raised here in Phoenix area, we want to kind of dive a little deeper on what this film means and how things have changed and progressed in this state.
Or if they have changed at all.
Yeah, so without further ado, people, we would like to introduce you to Pita Juarez.
Hey!
Oh, and Matty Steinkamp.
Hey!
Oh, yo, how are you guys doing?
Good. That was a good intro.
All right, good.
Thank you very much.
I don't even need a microphone.
I know, you probably don't. You probably already blown out our audio twice, all right? But no, it's really great to have you guys here, and we really love the work that you've been doing. Anybody who hasn't seen it, you've got to see the trailer for You Racist, Sexist Bigot because it's powerful, and the way that you've shot it, because it is a documentary style, and it's almost just interviews, interviewing, but it's. Like, even just in the trailer, just the way it's shot, it's beautiful.
That's all Matty.
It's all Matty. Yeah, that's what Matty does. And the questions answered was just well spoken by all the people, and the editing looks so great. So I'd love to see the full-length film and to wind up seeing how people wind up responding to it. So my first question to you is, what did you get out of making a film like that?
Well, thank you for all those wonderful compliments.
Super nice.
Yeah,
what a great day to feel that kind of love.
Yeah, seriously. The question was, what made me feel? How did it make me feel?
Yeah, to create a project like You Racist, Sexist Bigot.
I mean, it's a lot of pressure, right? I feel like working in a lot of the communities where, who are fighting social justice issues every single day. There's a lot of pressure to me as a filmmaker and just as a person who is a part of that community. But it's also really empowering and inspiring. And I don't really like those type of words. I think we use them too much. But I just feel like having those courageous people be vulnerable and strong enough to let us in their world is a really amazing feeling for both Matty and I. There was a lot of learning from this, and as woke as I think we like to think that we are, there's still so many cultures and so many stories and so many questions that I had for some of the people that are in the film.
And Matty, what made this project really special to you?
I think that first off, I think that we got to do it all here in Arizona, and there were a lot of things going on in the world that we were experiencing all in one little pocket here in Arizona that I think dove into so many different areas, and somehow we were that melting pot of like conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that this film allows people to understand maybe an identity that they had never experienced before. One of the characters, or rather one of the writers in the film, is undocumented and transgender, and just being able to understand where they're coming from, I think, and hearing their voice and hearing what they're saying and not having it misconstrued by media or by some type of advertisement. I think because it's a documentary and because you actually get to hear the words out of Karina's mouth, I think that allows other people here in Arizona to kind of have compassion, to feel I hear it from your voice, and I don't have to worry if it's true or not because I know it's coming from you.
How were you able to gain the trust of the guests that you were speaking to?
I did a lot of that casting, and I think it's I've worked with a lot of these people in the past with more social justice issues or campaigns. But yeah, I think that's like one of the hardest parts too, is trying to find that story that we try to be fair and like, all right, we have LGBTQ, we have Black Lives Matter, we have somebody from the Muslim community, but not trying to leave anybody behind and trying to find those folks. It didn't get difficult, but the things that we were asking too is just a little bit. It's really deep, so I think it helped having that community behind where they trust you and they say, okay, I'm willing to share the story. But I think if we would have been somewhere else, it would have been a little bit harder to do if we wouldn't have been in Phoenix or here in Arizona.
I also think that with some of these conversations, people were excited to be heard. I think that there was in some not all, in some cases there was definitely like a feeling of like, I can't wait to do my part in this. I can't wait to have my voice heard. And I think in some other cases it was an organic happenstance. We were there at the right place at the right time with our cameras, and people were vulnerable, and they were able to relay a message, that is very positive or inspiring, or in some cases sad, that allow the story to be told. And so I think that Pita really did an amazing job with finding the right conversations that were in Arizona and being able to schedule them time, because a lot of these people they're busy as well. Like, they're activists, they're politicians, that are, or at least, talking to politicians, trying to get their story out to the state. So I think that, Pita has that long line of journalism and communication in her career that definitely was a major part of the success of the film.
And because I believe you had a Sikh that you had, which is different because a lot of people do not interview or get the opinions of Sikhs, because a lot of racists will confuse them with Muslims and just attack, not knowing these are two different people, two different religions. What changed you? I want to say, like, from the beginning of this project to the end, what do you think changed you?
I mean, I think the meeting with Amar Atma, it was, understanding what the turban means to a Sikh, and understanding that it's their crown, and that the media has turned the imagery of a person wearing a turban as a negative image. And yet in their culture, it is looked at like the highest, honor to be wearing that.
Right.
And so I think that, we definitely learned that, wow, what a beautiful, wonderful thing to have in a culture. And it really, I think for both of us, really made us, more aware of kind of like our culture, that, what are things that we, really hold as like the highest value. And I think that's really trying to make that embed that into the community a little bit more, taking the messages from this film and going a step further and having community events, going to colleges, really trying to take what we have learned and really give it right back to the community. I think that's, at least for me, I think that's been the biggest thing that I've learned.
Yeah, I think I always go back to that moment too of learning about the turban, and yet it's looked at as like fear, right? Mm-hmm. Like the mainstream media or just even ourselves have done that, while it really is this beautiful thing that we didn't even know about. Well, I didn't, personally. So there was a lot of learning moments, which is, again, I talk about it was that's probably one of my favorite things about this whole process and in this film is really getting to know. And again, like I went back and I knew a lot of these people from different things, but I guess I didn't know them at that level. And I think it's really beautiful to sit down and have a vulnerable and conversation that's honest and transparent. And I don't think that we're doing that as much anymore. And that's why we have these, you know, these perspectives and these opinions, right? Like I always think of like something like immigration, where, you know, in mainstream media, where I've, you know, that's more my background. It's we're giving somebody a snippet of like a minute, right? A minute 30, and that's a really long package, or 30 seconds of something that is really complex and really complicated, and yet we want people to understand what immigration is about.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I think that to us, this was a moment to really take advantage of, like, tell me what it's like to be an immigrant, right? Like refugees. We think that refugees are all black refugees from somewhere, right? Where refugees can come from anywhere, you know, from Latin America, like, and it's like that whole, like, educating people, which, you know, kind of sucks because we shouldn't, like, be putting all of our energy into that, but a lot of the time it's super needed.
No, it is. I mean, there's a lot of ignorance that just fuels this, and it keeps fueling more ignorance, whereas it seems like people who have to educate, you know, others, you know, such as refugees, we just take that word, it's like, you know, they're coming from another place for either asylum or, and it could be from any place that isn't. I mean, the rap group, the Fugees, that's literally where they got the name from, refugees, you know. So we only have like 2 minutes on this segment, but did you want to ask a question real quick? Because I wanted to ask something real quick.
Go ahead, because I have a lot.
I want to know, I've got to know this. Where did you come up with the name, you racist, sexist bigot?
Yeah, that's a good one.
and every single time I say, like, they're like, what's the name of your film? Oh, my racist, sexist bigot. Oh, it's not about Trump. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, a disclaimer really fast. But you want to answer that one?
You racist, sexist bigot definitely came from when Pita and I first met. We wanted to create a short film that was just talking about these discrimination statements. And the idea was to really go out there and show people, you know, this stuff isn't, we should not be saying these things anymore. Like the fact that our children are being taught that this is okay to say, and these allowances have now turned into crimes. These crimes have turned into murders, and now these murders have turned into mass murders. Like, and all because we allowed words to be said. And I think the initial part was, you know, when you start getting into discrimination, racism, sexism, and bigotry, you know, you're covering a lot of conversations that can go in and out through the intersectional parts of identity. And it just so happened that, you know, during the political climate of the election year, 2016, both Pete and I were, like, you know, being, you know, infuriated with what was happening. The day after Trump was elected, we bought the domain, yourracist.sexistbigot.com.
It just fit.
And then
it's like
Matty bought all of them. He bought like 16 domains.
There was a lot, but it was. I mean, it was definitely started with the idea that we're, you know, discrimination. We didn't want to allow discrimination terms to be going on.
All right, we're gonna be right back with Matty and Pita. All right, for the next segment.
All you need is love. 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 You're my sister. You're my
Right, and we're back.
Continuing this fantastic conversation.
Yes. So, did you want to start off?
Want to start off with it was mentioned earlier how the three of us are natives of Arizona, right? I grew up in Phoenix. Where did you grow up, Matty?
Phoenix.
Also Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Okay. So when you took on this project, I'm curious to know, did you see an evolution of an understanding and acceptance, or did you see maybe a regression of it in the community?
I think like me working, in my 9 to 5 job where it's communications and building narrative and messaging around certain issues that I care for, and working with immigrant rights groups, I feel like we as a state have had this terrible narrative of like Arizona's a racist state, which we are.
Yeah, right.
We're trying to, right, little by little, do our little piece and like how do we make it better? A better Arizona, forward Arizona, right? All these like campaigns like that I have in my head, but I think that it's important to showcase the good, right? I think we're so focused on Trump and his agenda and everything that's coming, and because it's constantly a rapid response, I'm thinking in my comms head. But yeah, I think to me it was really important to show all these faces of hope, inspiration, that there is people here in Arizona that are fighting every single day to make it better, right? And not for a narrative purpose, but for their own lives. So I think having this sexist, bigotry and hate and discrimination, it's really important for me as somebody who's from here, right? Like so many places that I've traveled, and I say I'm from Phoenix and I'm from Arizona, and they're like, oh,
Right.
crazy there, right? And now it's like a little offensive because I know those people, right? Like I know all those people who are fighting to make it a better place, and the fact that if I can contribute with my skill set of like, look, these are the faces of Arizona, these are the people who we're fighting for, and we have to keep moving forward for.
Yeah, I think that, you totally hit it right on the head. Showing that these are the faces of the change in some cases, that really trying to show a positive light on Arizona. We're showing, these are the people that are making a change and not just standing by and watching the racism exist. These are the people that aren't just going to stand there and watch the bigotry exist, as it happens. And so I think even in parts of the film that you don't get to see until you see the film, but there's protests. There's active. The Women's March is in the film. I mean, actively, like when we started filming the film, the Women's March, the first one happened.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So I mean, like you have these elements that are parts of history just in the last 24 months.
Yeah.
That I think are very important for, number one, us to be thankful for. I think it's important for us as Arizonans to know that, we didn't go all red on everything. We elected a new sheriff in town. We
Thank goodness.
We raised minimum
Mm-hmm.
wage. Like, these are things that have, are the positive that still is being squashed down. Whereas I think things in this film really give people that chance to, ante up, really change that narrative a little bit.
And what I want to also know is, since you three, and I want you in on this too, is what changes have you seen? Now, see, I'm from a blue state. New Jersey. I've known it to be that way. Yeah, we've had Republican governors, whatever, but it's typically a blue state and very progressive, and it always has been. I've lived in Brooklyn, New York, very progressive state as well. Moving out here was something completely different, to where, you racist, sexist, bigot really hit you a lot harder, even though I've experienced racism and bigotry. And I want to know, I'm going to ask Pita this also first, and I want to ask you as well, and then Matty, you can join in. But do you find there's more racism or sexism that you've encountered?
Ooh. I feel like I've gotten more of the racism, just because we literally had a law that you could get pulled over because of the color of your skin. So SB 1070, right? So, and I feel like I come from a community where that happens more, right? At this whole immigration thing, but. Yeah, and then I feel like maybe sexism, I like it's not in my face, and I've been very fortunate that hasn't been the case. But I would really have to more so think about that rather than like the racism that I think it's just like boom, like been personally affected by laws like SB 1070 where again just because of the color of your skin, right? Like how much more racism does it get?
I think for me it was sexism first. What I experienced in that was just going working in corporate America, being the only female in a room with nothing but men in the room as well, and being asked about how comfortable am I in my heels, walking around a construction site or doing my job, and not really thinking about it. But I think it was sexism first, and it wasn't until SB 1070 where a big shift happened, and it was a combination of sexism and racism, because now I'm that Latina that what are you even doing here?
Right.
Why are you even in this? Why you exist in this state? Why you should be out of here? And it makes me think back to when my dad, he was born in Phoenix, and he would tell me stories about going shopping in downtown Phoenix. There was like a one men's store. I think it's where Hanny's is at, or the bar's at. And it was the one gentleman's store where any man could buy a suit. And he went with his father to buy a good pair of, my grandfather needed to buy like a good pair of khakis or something like that. And right at the entrance said, no dogs, no Mexicans allowed. And my dad's like, I will always remember that. And he said, my dad told him, my grandfather told him, they don't need our money. That's okay, mijo. We don't need to go there. So my dad was happy to see then the changes happening within the city and the state. But then it broke his heart seeing with SB 1070 passing, and this again, almost a regression, regression of all that changes made. So it just feels like again like another uphill.
Mm-hmm. And that wasn't that long ago. That was
I was like, your dad is probably
this was like in the late 50s.
Because SB 1070 is 2010, so it's like they do go back. They're making America great again.
Mm-hmm.
So Matty, I mean, have you experienced any racism or sexism? I mean, you're a white male.
Yeah,
straight white male. Just put it out there.
I think it's important to understand that I'm a privileged white male, and I think that growing up. It's totally changed, and I think it gets said really well in the film how discrimination changes very, very fast through different things, and it's different for different people, even within a family. One person might experience one thing where another isn't. The one thing that I have noticed, though, is that the more I become more aware of my racism or sexism or bigotry in my life, things that I might say that I'm trying to keep myself in check of, I realize how much of sexist or sexism is not thought of it as a bad thing, and it's the simple idea of like you bitch,
right.
The word slut, these general topics that that I've said to my guy friends. That in the end is a very sexist negatory thing towards women.
And guys do that,
Yeah.
And they call it locker room talk.
And the idea that is allowed to go on okay, or that there was no adult figure or positive role model saying that's not okay to say, I think leads us to now even more horrible things that are said out all the time in men.
And I remember when we were recording the sexist part, I remember you thinking and telling me, shit, have I ever done any of those things?
Yeah. I mean,
which was a really great, like if you're not learning about yourself and something.
Right.
And I felt like that for you was a really great moment where I was like, oh, Matty's really had to go think about this, right? Like he feels uncomfortable.
Which is dope because hopefully people will see the film and feel the same way that you felt recording it.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like a self-reflection. I know I had the same thing, hip-hop, I rhyme, I do my thing. And always have since, the 80s, really. And then in the 90s, I really picked it up. And one of the things you say was, especially back then, was like faggot. And, you start talking all that shit. And then, to the point where then I started getting some gay friends. And then you're like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you start reflecting on yourself and how many times there have been songs that I had done that I remade them, like in 2010, I think. and instead of faggot, I replaced it with maggot, and then like hatchet, and I wound up replacing.
So
the
you
word.
got more creative.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know what? Because it's not cool. I never say the N word. I never call women bitches in my I never say it in real life. So there's certain things you have to reflect upon, and if a movie like this can do that, and that's growing up. That's growing up, and knowing the people that surround you, and it kills me. And I want to ask you, like doing this film or even just growing up in Arizona, do you wind up seeing people who just refuse to change, or they blame others for being, too sensitive and snowflakeish? You know what I'm talking about.
I mean, we've had direct, like, family members of writers as well as our family members, like my family members, that initially were like, whoa, what are you doing?
Right.
Like why do you got to go out there and say such horrible things? And I'm like, the word racism is not a horrible thing. The act of racism is the horrible thing.
Yes.
And we have to make sure that people, especially our future, understands what that is, and that it's not bad to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, right, like when I talk about this like pressure that I felt, is that I don't think we're gonna change anything here, right? Like to change race and discrimination, like shit, that's like a whole nother, that's crazy. But to try to think that you're gonna change that, but I think what we really want to do is we want to spark a conversation, right? Like that feeling, like going to the movie theaters with your girlfriend, saying like, "Hey, have I ever done that to you?" Or
right.
and like just like having, right, like it's just to raise consciousness of the little things that even as people who are woke, right, that think back and like, oh man, I did that, right, and like I need to change that or be more aware, or how can I have a conversation with my brother who uses the word faggot all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like all these things of like starting conversation. And I always say, like, even with like, it doesn't have to be like you have to go and be an activist or protest, but like even like sitting down and having uncomfortable conversations with your own family members, right? With your neighbor, whoever it is that you're just like, yeah, we've never talked about this, we've never addressed this, but you made me feel this way.
Well, we got a minute 30 left. We want to take a time to just spotlight what you guys are up to individually.
Yeah. Individually, but also get the name of your production company.
Please.
Like hit us up.
Oh, Mango Skies Films.
Mango Skies Film, and then just where can everyone find you?
MangoSkiesFilms.com.
And individually, we do everything together.
Look at Matty's face.
No, we do. I mean, it's
all of our projects. But yeah, so for You Racist Sexist Bigot, we're constantly putting out new stuff, because we can't have, people aren't able to see the movie, and that's the question they're always getting. But, in our page, on our website, on our social media, You Racist Sexist Bigot, we're putting out little different clips, right? Like something that has to do with just Native American community, something that has to do just with Black Lives Matter. So people aren't getting bored and being like, oh my God, when is this movie coming out? And they're not putting anything out.
But you can see the film in Atlanta the week of the 22nd through the 23rd of April.
Good.
Shout out to people in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We got an official selection at the Atlanta Independent Film Festival there.
Beautiful.
And then we will be we're announcing it now, but the Phoenix International Film Festival, we have an official selection there.
Yay!
So, we will be screening on April 9th and April 13th here in Phoenix.
All right. We got like 5 seconds left, so we want to give a shout out to Matty Steinkamp and Pita Juarez. And thank you. You got to check out Your Racist Sexist Bigot when it comes out. Well,
wow.
what's up?
I mean,
What's up?
I give up. Bye.
Yeah,
So much.
this is what we do. We make sure that we spotlight some of the best and the brightest, and we want to make sure you check them out. Look up You Racist Sexist Bigot everywhere, and check out Matty and Pita and what they're doing.
Yes.
Check out their production company and let us know what you thought of today's interview. And also let us know if you want to be interviewed, if you want to come to our home and share your idea, your something that you're up to. Let us know and hit us up.
Yeah, so make sure you hit us up at ZodAndrea.com, at ZodAndrea on everything from Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube. God, we even just signed up on something called Vero. We don't even know what it is. But we
Oh, we
grabbed the
did?
name.
Okay.
Yeah, but we did.
Okay.
Yeah. So, make sure you check us out on all the social networks. And contact us if you are a racist, sexist bigot, because we want to also talk to you and ask you why.
Let's have a conversation.
I'm telling you. Stop it. All right? We'll see you later.
Bye.